Hello, welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the Monday show. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by Mark Crothers. And ladies and gents, are you sitting down? Are you comfortable? Do take a seat. If not, do not adjust your sets. Newcastle United have finally won on the road in the Premier League. Yes, they beat Everton 4-1 down on Merseyside. A double from Malik Chow and further goals from Lewis Miley and Nick Valdemare, securing the first win in the top flight away from St James's Park since April. It was a win that Newcastle United needed. It was a win that Eddie Howe needed, and it was a superb victory. Newcastle blew Everton away in their own backyard, a brand new stadium with sparkles and all, but it was Valdemare, Miley and co who glistened in the cold November evening. And it was wonderful to see pace, direction, and execution. They looked like Eddie Howe's side, something we've been unable to see on the road for such a long time. It was a lesson in rotation. It was a masterclass of preparation and a glorious way to see out a tough November. Are Newcastle United back? Not yet. Let's give it a few more games, especially away from home. But this shows what Newcastle United can do, and without some of their stars. Just like at Manchester City when they beat them at St James's Park, they've set the standard and now they must hold themselves to it. But ladies and gents, drink it in. Newcastle United have finally won on the road in the Premier League. Mark, while I catch my breath, how are we doing?
I'm good. I'm not sure how to follow that. But no, good. Really good weekend, getting into the very early festivities. Decorations up in the house and keeping one eye on events across the Premier League. Obviously enjoyed Saturday night, watching that long-awaited away win. So yeah, it's been a good weekend.
You and I have both put our Christmas trees up early. I was going to come here and rant about how it's far too early.
It is too early.
It wasn't even December.
But when you've got kids,
it has to be done. Real one or fake one?
Real kids. Yeah, real kids.
Very good.
Fake ones. Can't be doing all the pine needles and stuff and picking them up.
Do you know what? I've got no problem with pine needles. It's lovely, the smell when you walk in the gaff as well. Don't mind that you have to water it every few days and you can't keep it near to a heat source. My issue is, this is like the 7th year in a row now we've bought a real one. What's 7 times 5? Do the maths.
Oh, it's too early for maths.
Just because I can't be bothered to do 7 times 50. Anyway,
35.
By the time you add it all up, so that's 350 quid I've spent on. Oh my God, 350 quid I've spent on real Christmas trees in the last 7 years. Just buy a fake one.
Inflation as well,
It's ridiculous. But you got a little kid. The wife loves a real Christmas tree, so that's going to have to be done for the foreseeable future. Do you know what? It looks lovely. The lights are up. Lights on the front of the house. It's nice. I'm feeling festive actually.
I'm getting there. Walking through town and seeing the markets and stuff, and even though it's raining outside, it's I'm getting there.
I appreciate I've just come across as a bit of a Grinch. It was more done in jest than anything else. But Christmas tree went up yesterday. It was following on from a wonderful victory for Newcastle United against Everton. Loads to talk about, Mark. Just sum up though briefly your thoughts on the game overall.
Yeah, it was the most complete performance we've seen from Newcastle this season. It wasn't perfect, but it was a really, really strong performance. I thought everyone from the manager to the coaching staff to everyone that was on the pitch played their part. There's a word I'll use a lot through this episode, I think, which is balance. I think we saw balance throughout the side. I thought we saw aggression in the right times. We saw poise at the right times. The decision making, which we've criticised quite a bit recently, was there. There looked calmness, there looked confidence. It was just a really, really good away performance, and one where I think a lot of people that we have maybe criticised in recent weeks or throughout the season can maybe have a go back now and go, well, this is what we can do.
Well, as I said there, my opening monologue, let's give it a few weeks. Although it just occurred to me, what is the next away game?
We don't need to talk about that yet. There's 2 home games first.
Yeah. But it just occurred to me what is coming over the horizon. So you actually can't say give it the next away game because it doesn't really count in terms of what we saw against Everton. It counts, form goes out the window and all that. Anyway, that's to come. But yeah, we saw some rotation in the first team. We're going to talk about that because I mentioned it, in my opinion, it was the art of rotation. But the first big call that Eddie Howe made was Aaron Ramsdale in for Nick Pope, and pretty much I'd say 95% of people in the build-up of this game were saying you've got to make that switch. It was made a lot easier by the fact that Nick Pope has picked up an injury, which is a groin injury. He's going to have to seek some further treatment on it, so he won't be in the squad for the game against Spurs, and maybe even further ahead than that. Whether that's coincidental or not, that doesn't really matter. But just putting the result to one side, that call had to be made, and it was the right call.
Yeah, I think we said last week it was time now for Ramsdale to come in, more so for his own benefit, because I think if he hadn't come in after what happened last weekend, then I'm not sure in the Champions League game, I should say, then I'm not sure how he would have got into this side other than playing Carabao Cup and maybe FA Cup games. So I think, yes, to a degree, it was taken out of Eddie's hands. But at the same time, I think that call may well have been made anyway.
Didn't have too much to do, so I'm not really going to bother asking you how he did, because there wasn't much to judge him on. And I guess actually the next question to ask is probably a difficult one to answer, because we've already said that Nick Pope won't be back for the Spurs game, so that already leaves Eddie Howe without a decision to make. But going further afield, as we said, the next away game is a pretty big one. What happens going forward with the goalkeeping department? Does Aaron Ramsdale, for the foreseeable future, have the jersey, or would you see Nick Pope coming back in because Eddie Howe really does like him? What happens?
There are two people who can decide that, and Nick Pope isn't one of them. If Aaron Ramsdale over the next two home games performs as we hope he will, then the shirt's his, I think. Obviously, that'll be down to Eddie Howe. But I think at the moment, I'm always big on motivation and how you motivate players. And I just think if you play Aaron Ramsdale for the next two games and say he keeps clean sheets or puts in two really good performances, and then Nick Pope's back fit and you put Pope back in, what does that then say to Ramsdale? So I think there's a lot of, I think you mentioned last week about someone suggesting it would be a nuclear option to change the goalkeeper. I would argue it would be again if you were to do that to Ramsdale. Now, in terms of performance on Saturday, you're right, 100% he didn't have a lot to do, but I thought what he did do was very good. We know what his distribution is like, and I think to a certain degree you saw, again, the calmness in the defence in the midfield that he provided when he was in possession of the ball. There was one, I can't remember who he played the ball to. It might be in Bruno or Lewis Miley in midfield, but there was a ball he played where he just pinged it straight through the defence in midfield, in our midfield, and it kind of started a counter attack. And I just thought, I'm not sure Nick Pope plays that pass. I'm not sure he sees that pass. But overall, I thought he looked good. He was commanding. He came and collected when he had to. He was always another option. I think this is part of why Newcastle were better going forwards, because he was able to start attacks a little bit quicker and maybe make those passes to instigate counter attacks. So yeah, 100% not going to get carried away by his performance, because he'll be more challenged against Spurs. He'll be more challenged against Burnley if he stays in the side. So I think it's just one of those where it's promising.
I think you could definitely see that the defence was looking a lot more calm, confident as well, because a little bit like when Dan Burns played at left back, I think in the back of their minds they're thinking, I don't really want to give it back to Nick Pope. I don't really want to give Dan Burn that left back position. But when you've got someone, Lewis Hall left back, and you've got Aaron Ramsdale on the line, you do feel more confident. You can see that the way they're playing. They don't mind giving it back to Ramsdale because they feel like he's going to deal with it. Whereas as soon as you give it back to Nick Pope, it's like hot potato, and you just think it's either going to go out of touch or it's going to get into trouble. And that was a noticeable difference. So going forward, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. But great to see Ramsdale in net. The other changes that were made, Elanga came in, Miley came in, Joe Linton came in, Hall came in, and Valdemar. And it was, for me, the art of rotation. I don't want to get ahead of myself, feet on the ground, but I've always thought this season that Eddie Howe was just getting to grips with having to rotate his side, but also having a squad big enough to rotate. Saturday, again, putting the result aside, I think just the fact that he made those changes was a real crucial moment, I think, in the evolution of Eddie Howe as managers Newcastle United and the squad, that maybe he is now comfortable with it, and we are starting to see the benefits of it.
I think the big criticism during the last Champions League campaign was that the rotation wasn't there.
But he didn't have the squad, did he?
No, but at the same time, I think there were games where players should have maybe dropped out and been rested because there were players capable of coming in. It just didn't happen enough. It did happen to a degree, but not enough. I looked at Saturday when the side came out. I thought it's going to be really interesting, particularly midfield, to see how the midfield functioned. You mentioned two players there. I think there are two that have maybe got a little bit to prove to Eddie that came in. The others that were brought in didn't because he knows what they can do. But that is Anthony Elanga, because we know he hasn't had the best time since he's joined the club, and Lewis Miley, who, yes, we know Eddie rates him highly, but at the same time, still I think has a little bit to prove to Eddie and maybe to his teammates as well. So I thought that was the interesting one to watch. And look, let's be honest, I know we're going to come on to both, but they both proved what they can do. Simple as that.
Yeah, I've got some stats about Miley's performance in a moment, which I think will just reaffirm how impressive he was. But we'll start with the first goal. Malik Thiaw getting the header. I think we saw a glimpse of what Anthony Elanga can do, his pace, racing through, getting the shot off. I mean, let's make no bones about it. That is a difficult skill to have when you are running it neck break pace, and then to get the shot off. And Pickford had to really stretch out to tip it wide. A great effort from Elanga, and that kind of set the tone, I think, of how Newcastle United, especially in the first half, were looking to play. The ball over the top, using his pace. More on that in a moment. But then the ball comes in from the corner, from Lewis Miley. Big responsibility on his shoulders, not only to come into that side, but also to be handed the task of delivering these dead balls into the box. Perfect delivery, great header from Malik Thiaw. If we're being honest, it's poor from Everton from a defensive point of view, and I think Pickford should do better as well. I don't know really why he's jumping in the way he does, but we don't care about that. Great header from Thiaw to open the score, and I think to get the goal mark under a minute is really, really crucial, because you're away from home. You've got all this attention on you as well. Newcastle must win, Eddie Howe must win, because it's been so dreadful on the road. So to get that early goal, really, really vital. Silences the crowd, and in normal circumstances, you're like, yes, this is what we need. Brilliant. We've shut the home crowd up. Early lead, we'll build on it. But then this is Newcastle United, and early goals, and Newcastle United, especially recently, do not mix well. Were you a little bit worried when that goal goes in?
I wasn't worried because of what's happened recently. I was worried because I've been watching Newcastle for nearly 40 years now, and you learn to expect the worst, and anything better is great. But no, look, I thought that the tone was set. Again, we look at how they use Walter Marder and being quite critical of that in recent weeks, but the build up to what led to the corner, he was used to perfection, dropping off, and a winger going in behind him. Perfect pass from Voltemada. I thought it was a brilliant pass, and I actually think Elanga should possibly do a little bit better, if I'm honest, with a chance. But got the corner. It's a brilliant ball from Miley. I mean, you know what I think of Lewis Miley. You take the mick enough when I talk about him, but I would argue that is probably nearly impossible to defend. It's such a perfect ball, and credit to Malik Thiaw. He's not known for his goal scoring threat. I think that was spoken about post match, but it's a brilliant header, and he's had to guide it through quite a crowded area. So yeah, really delighted to see him get off the mark. Hopefully we can have a longer discussion about him a bit later on, because I could probably do an episode on him on my own at the moment.
We'd just be repeating everything we've said about him in recent weeks. He's just absolutely brilliant.
There's nothing he can't do. It appears that way. Look, I'm not going to get carried away because it's still very, very early. You will have a difficult patch at some point, but everything we've seen of Malik Thiaw so far, that £35 million price tag, it looks he's making a mockery of it. I mean, he's good in the air. He's good on the floor. His distribution's decent. He's got pace. We know that he's got aerial threat in the other box now. He seems to link up well with the other defenders. His concentration's maybe the one area where I think there's a little bit of a room for improvement. But I think that'll come. Just looks like an absolute steal. I think there's a really, really strong argument to suggest that he could be one of, if not the signing of the summer transfer window, not just for Newcastle, across the Premier League, because of the impact he's made. Just brilliant, and delighted for him to get the 2 goals on Saturday.
It's funny because when I think about Malik Thiaw, I think about his first appearance for Newcastle United, comes off the bench, and he makes a mistake almost instantly. I always think about those fine margins because he recovered really well, and I think he won the ball back, if memory serves me correctly. And then he went on and he had a nice little turn in the middle of the park and he settled into it. But just think what would have happened had the opposition scored from that moment. Would we be sitting here 2 months later saying, oh my goodness me, he's one of the finest centre backs we've seen in black and white? And he is heading towards that level of the likes of Bob Moncur, the likes of Johnny Woodgate, Botman's talked about in the same breath as those as well. Glenn Roeder, he is heading there. He's got a long way to go. Yeah, I don't really like having those conversations too early on. We had the conversation about Tonali after about 60 games, so we'll let Chow get there and see where he's at in a year's time, so to speak. But fine margins.
The point you make about that debut appearance, I think it kind of summed him up. Where yes, there was a little bit of an error, but his confidence allowed him about 30 seconds later to, I think, do a Cruyff turn past the striker.
It was.
So that kind of tells you everything you need to know about him, that he's clearly got a lot of self-confidence, which you need in the Premier League. I often say there's a thin line between confidence and arrogance. And as a Premier League player, you have to strike that line very carefully. But I think, at the moment, he's looking excellent. Again, I'm not going to get too carried away, but I think there's a player that will be another massive tick for the recruitment team.
Certainly so. Newcastle had to weather a little bit of a storm, but Miley gets the important second goal with 25 minutes on the clock. So vital that Newcastle go and get that, because in recent weeks they've been guilty of sitting back, looking a little bit timid, but not here at all. And it's just great to see Miley hit the ball, because often we do see Newcastle's midfielders maybe want to play one more pass than is necessary, or switch it onto another foot. But here, Miley just put everything into it, and even better than that, it's an absolute howler from Jordan Pickford. That goal, though, Mark, in terms of the game, before we talk about Miley's overall performance, so important.
Yeah, and I think this is where we see the importance of Tino Livramento in the side, because he almost instigated the move. He certainly kept the move going every time it looked as if it was going to break down. His movement down the right-hand side, his willingness to go into a difficult area to defend for Everton, where he sort of cut into the area and made himself a nuisance in there. We'll not talk about his shot, because it was heading towards corner flag, wasn't it? But credit to Dan Burn, by the way, because to keep that and direct it towards Miley was no small achievement. But I thought Livramento in that moment showed everything that he offers in the kind of attacking third, and in build-up play, and his importance to Newcastle as a side. The strike from Lewis Miley, I think I saw it on, I think it might have been Sky's coverage, where they were talking about a goal Everton conceded against Leeds earlier in the season, where Tarkowski was it a penalty, I think, where he's gone to block a shot right in front of Pickford and it's hit his arm and harshly given us a penalty. Whereas this time it was exactly the same situation and he's left it. And I think Pickford sort of thought he was going to try and get a touch on it. And that's where the confusion's come out. Possibly one of the only people in Newcastle at heart who felt a little bit sorry for Pickford in that sense. But at the same time,
we've just lost 1,000 listeners there, Mark.
No, I'm thinking purely as a player, not as everything that comes with Jordan Pickford as a goalkeeper. I think it's unfortunate, but at the same time, we know what he gives Newcastle.
He's deservedly England's number one. He's absolutely fantastic.
There's another 1,000 gone,
but he had a howler.
Yeah. But he did,
which we're all for. And
the thing with Pickford in Newcastle is that it's going to go one or two ways. He's either going to be inspired or he's going to be destroyed. And I always remember was it 3-2 at St James's when Rondon and Perez
heads down the tunnel, doesn't he? And he's mouthing off as he heads down the tunnel at half time, and that was just the catalyst for the crowd to really go up another notch.
But at the same time, he's had unbelievable games against Newcastle. But going back to Saturday, I think Miley's done well to. It would have been easy for him just to take a touch, to look for a pass, but I think it shows the confidence he has in his own ability to get that shot away, and just delighted for him, absolutely delighted.
I bet John Anderson was happy. He loves shouting, just hit it.
He does, yeah.
Maybe Miley had listened to him and took on that advice. But Miley was absolutely superb. Gets the nod. I thought he looked really, really good. He looked controlled in possession, distributes the ball so well. 96% of his passes, so 55 out of 57, were completed. He had 2 key passes. Obviously, one of those includes the assists, and then he's got the goal as well. 3 out of 5 crosses into the box. There was a long ball that he played over the top as well. It was just really important that he took his chance when it came, because his chances have been limited, especially in the Premier League. But he took it. He really did. And for me, I think he has to be in the starting 11 against Spurs.
Go back to what I said earlier, motivation. I think I wouldn't be shocked if maybe Tonali comes in for Joelinton as a change, but then it's how do you then, what is the makeup of that midfield in terms of positional sense? Where does Miley play deeper? Does Bruno play a little further forward? Where does Tonali go? There's loads of questions to answer. But yeah, look, again, I'll say, you know what I think of Lewis Miley. I've rated him since I've seen the kid at 16, and that's only, 3 years ago now. But I think I mentioned last time I was on here covering an FA Youth Cup game where Newcastle played Arsenal, and a very, very good Arsenal side. And I said then, Lewis Miley will play for Newcastle first team pretty soon, because it was so obvious that every time he got the ball, he was so calm in possession and just so confident. Everything he did was done with a bit of class, and he would almost bring a calmness to his teammates on a night when they were completely outplayed by Arsenal. It was a really high-class Arsenal side. And all the things I saw that night at St. James's, I've seen since he's been in the first team. Yes, he's had dips, but this comes with young players. And I think when I watched him on Saturday, I thought, you're ready now. And I know that sounds like a really early call to make, but it's not. He's played over 50 games in the first team now. I think it's about time that he does get more regular game time.
I mean, the biggest compliment you can pay him, really, is that we weren't sitting there thinking, oh, my goodness me, we're missing Tonali. And actually, when the team news dropped, I was surprised Tonali wasn't in the starting 11, but I also wasn't thinking, oh, my goodness me, he's placed him with Miley. Like, I wanted Miley in that side because he needs minutes, and then it's up to him to take the opportunity, and he did so. But I just thought the midfield as a whole, it just seemed in so much more control than what we've seen in recent games, especially away from home. And that's not because Tonali's gone out of the side at all. So I'm not pinning that on Tonali. I just thought as a collective, they looked so much better. In recent away games in particular, they look like they've been kicking around a grenade that's about to go off. Nobody wants the ball. They can string maybe 1 or 2 passes together, but after that, there's no sequence, and that obviously disrupts your flow going forward. But they were just so good in possession on Saturday. 4 players across the entire team had plus 90% pass completion, with another 6 with 80 plus. They had 445 passes in total in that game, which was 198 more than Everton away from home, right? 70% of those passes executed when the final, 70% of passes executed in the final third were successful. And I think that's just kind of the key stats there. They were just better with the ball in possession, which meant they could get up the field a lot quicker. They could get up the field and just try and hurt the opposition. They just looked more comfortable with the ball.
So there's 2 sides to this. And I remember thinking this during the game. Everton's press was non-existent. They did not press Newcastle on the ball at any time in the game. But the other side of that is Newcastle could have gone the same way and just passed the ball with ease and made simple passes. But they've gone to they've obviously noticed Everton aren't pressing too intensely, so they've gone to hurt them, and they've done it brilliantly. And I think that's where the Mileys, the Brunos, Joelinton was better on the ball. I thought he looked really good on the ball as well, and he obviously triggered presses as well. Looking at the defensive side of it, but I just thought, throughout the side, maybe overplaying this, but maybe part of it does come from Ramsdale being in as well, because that calmness has just spread very quickly. But I thought that. The back 4, the 3 in midfield, I thought the 3 at the top end of the pitch worked really hard to get into spaces, to make those openings for midfielders and wingers as well, to really threaten the space and really put Everton on the back foot. It was just a really good performance, really composed. And I think particularly Bruno and Miley in midfield, I think we know what Bruno thinks of Lewis Miley because he spoke about it quite a bit. I think you've seen possibly one of the biggest indications of the absolute trust that senior players have in him.
How key was the decision to switch Bruno and Miley? So obviously Tonali tends to be the deeper lying midfielder. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it with the engine he's got on him, but he is. But it was Bruno in that position and Miley in what the position Bruno usually plays, which is a bit more of a freer role.
Yeah, I think that could be down to experience. And I think Bruno, one of his underrated qualities is his reading of the game. He's a very good reader of kind of where the attacking or the opposition are going to move in attacking areas. He does position himself pretty well. I actually think it's something Tonali could possibly improve on a little bit if he does play in that deeper role in a defensive point of view. And also, because of Bruno being a little bit deeper, it probably give Lewis Miley a little bit more space as well to work in. And again, I'll say it's down to Lewis Miley then to make the most of that. And I thought he took full advantage by, as you say, the stats you read out earlier tell you exactly what he did on the ball. It's an interesting midfield Newcastle have now with all the options in now. See, we saw Ramsey and Willett come on as well. You got Sandro Tonali who's in there, who we know can do. I personally think he could probably do any role in midfield you asked of him. So Newcastle have got a lot of players who can do multiple roles in midfield, and I think it's probably where Eddie Howe, and this isn't a criticism, where he may struggle a little bit to get that balance right because so many of them can do so many different roles. We've seen Joelinton play that deeper role. It's difficult. He's then got to judge what the opposition are going to do or how he wants the game to go, and then ask each, obviously, midfielder he's got, whoever the three are that he picks, to get that kind of perfection in those roles, which he got on Saturday.
While at the same time, giving Lewis Miley that run of games, which helps his development. You know, in many ways, if he's not in the side against Spurs, I don't think too many people would be surprised because Tonali's waiting there to come back in. Bruno just never seems to get put out of the side unless he's absolutely knackered. You know, it's difficult for Eddie because there's so many things he's got to balance for the good of the side, and it is not a task that I envy at all. But on the other hand, you say, well, this is exactly why you built the squad.
Would you play Lewis Miley
on Tuesday? Yeah, I would. I think he deserves it.
I wouldn't be shocked if he played Tuesday but dropped out Saturday.
Bit more of a physical game, perhaps. Yeah. But he's, you know, that's the thing. He's looking because he's looking stronger.
About physical game, but the lad's like 6'3" now. He's not small.
Oh, I know.
But I know what you mean.
I get that. Waldemar with the next goal, lovely finish from the German. Really clever to lob it over Pickford. But I want to talk about the assists. Anthony Elanga does so well. He's got that drive and that determination to get the ball, and then the accuracy to play in Waldemar. It is a really good goal.
Yeah, a lesson in persistence and strength and tenacity from Anthony Elanga. We speak about these performances aside, having to be the catalyst for an upturn in form away from home, and I think what we're seeing there is the catalyst for an upturn in form from one player, from Anthony Elanga. I don't think it's any coincidence that he had Tino Livramento behind him, someone who's willing to get forward to give him space or an option in difficult areas. I thought it was a lovely ball by Tino, by the way, that I know kind of the Everton defenders got there first, but I thought it was a lovely ball over the top from Tino to really threaten Everton. But credit to Elanga, not just for winning the ball, for showing that strength, but the weight of his pass into Waldemar. People will say it's a simple pass. It's not. It's if he overhits it, it runs away. If he underhits it, it probably gets cut out. Let's just keep talking about the finish. The first touch, the audacity to do what he did, to chip it over or dink it over Pickford. It's just, I actually stood up from my chair. I stood up and clapped. It was just brilliant. My 11-year-old son looked very weirdly at me when I did it, but I just thought it was just beautiful. It's a beautiful goal and a growing collection of beautiful goals from a player who is, I honestly think he could be anything he wants to be. I really do. Every time I see him, I thought it was his best performance for ages on Saturday.
Don't tell the Bayern Munich chiefs that. I'm not liking that. Just a reminder, this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. Do click the link in the podcast description box and get a discount offer on your NordVPN plan. No risk with a 30-day money-back guarantee. One subscription can be used across 10 devices. If you're browsing on public Wi-Fi, so on the bus, the train, in a cafe, in a restaurant, the NordVPN can give you that added extra element of security against potential hackers lurking in the shadows. You'll be supporting the podcast at the same time, so click the link and do sign up. What was interesting, I thought, about Elanga, to me, for large parts of that game, it seemed like Newcastle were playing to his strengths. Yeah. They were determined to get the ball over the top and give him the space to run into. Now, 40% of Newcastle's play came down that side. So, as you mentioned, Tino's absolutely crucial in that. If you watch the goal back for Valdemar, you can see Tino picks the ball up and straight away Elanga's on his bike and he's pointing to where he wants it. He wants it down that flank. The ball over the top, Elanga, as we say, does the rest. And I think you're not going to have the opportunity to do that in every single game. And this is where, in many ways, I applaud managers for having principles when it comes to their approach to the game and sticking to it. But also, I do think you need to be flexible. Clearly, on Saturday evening, they'd done their homework and thought this is the perfect game for Anthony Elanga to really use that pace. And we saw that, I thought, and he used it quite well. Look, it wasn't a performance that will grab headlines. It wasn't a performance that we'll be talking about in a month's time, let alone 5 years' time. But what it does do is it gives a platform to build on, but it also shows you that when Newcastle do play to his strengths, there is a player there and the opposition can't really handle it.
It's a learning process for everyone involved, though. And this is something where I've never really bought into the complete criticism of Elanga, where, God, we've said this so many times, but you look back to the Gordon situation when he came in, and I think, yes, you can do all the analysis you want of a player, a potential signing, but until they're in the building, until they're training with you day in, day out, until they're playing matches, you don't know how to get the best out of them until it's been done in practice. So I think what we're maybe seeing here are the kind of foundations of an improved run of form from Elanga, a clear sign that Newcastle are learning to use him in the best way possible for them. I think he won't be used in the same way he was at Forest. I think there'll be a slightly different role from there. But I thought it was really promising. Now, throwing it forward to Tuesday against Tottenham, Newcastle's wingers are going to be massive in this game because we know Destiny Udogie and Pedro Porro love getting forwards, but defensively, Porro's possibly a little bit better than Udogie, but I think that Newcastle's wingers can dictate the game for them by pressing them back and putting Tottenham on the back foot. So for me, I don't think Barnes did anything wrong. I thought he played really well, but without getting reward. Probably should have scored when he got played in left-hand side, one-on-one. For me, I don't think there's any reason to drop's maybe not the right word. I don't think you drop them, but I don't think there's any need to bring them out the starting lineup.
Well, there's a point I was going to make later in the show about Lewis Hall, but I'll make it now as we're talking about it. Some of the reaction to Hall not being in the starting 11 against Marseille was so over the top, as we discussed last week. But this game and performance that we saw from him on Saturday was exactly the reason anyhow he did it, because he's managing the fitness of the lad. He doesn't want him to pull up and then be out for months. He's also wanting him in this game where he maybe thinks it's better suited for him, energy in the tank, and we saw how good Lewis Hall was. He was absolutely superb. But at the same time, against Spurs, Barnes has dropped for Anthony Gordon. There will be a reaction, and it will be a negative one. Now, if I'm sitting here thinking everyone's got 100% in their tank and we're basing it on form, who starts? Harvey Barnes for me, without a shadow of a doubt. However, they haven't got 100% in the tank because they're playing game after game. There's such a quick turnaround, and it goes back to what we said at the start, the art of rotation. I think Eddie's getting to grips with it now. And as a fan base, I think we've got to be very, very careful not to overreact at team sheets going forward when there are 3 games in a week, because Eddie Howe has to manage the squad right. He's picking a side that he thinks is fit enough to win a game, and it's not an ideal world, but that's what he's doing.
And they'll have all the statistics, all the players we've monitored today, that would have been monitored throughout yesterday as well in recovery. They'll know the stats, they'll know the fitness levels, they'll know the fatigue levels, they'll know all that. Those carrying knocks, they'll know severity of injuries, whatever's happening. Sometimes we've got to trust what's going on at the club. and I know it hasn't been easy because sometimes the rotation hasn't made sense at times, but there will always be reasoning behind it. The one thing I'll say about Howe, since he's come in, there's always been solid reasoning behind decisions that he's made. The Burn stuff at left back was because, quite simply, there weren't a sensible option elsewhere. You know, the rotation on Saturday, there was reasons behind it, and it worked. So I think, yeah, whatever happens Tuesday night, come 7 o'clock or whatever time the team sheets will come out, I think we've just got to understand why it's being done, and there will be reasons behind it. Personally, I would keep it as is. I think it's a reward for the players as long as they're all fit and ready. But if there are changes, there will be reasons behind it. It genuinely wouldn't shock me if Gordon did come back in. But at the same time, I would feel for Harvey Barnes. Again, there'll be reasons behind it, but I think he's been brilliant over the last sort of 3-4 weeks.
Yes, we'll have the match preview with John Gibson later this evening, as well as the view from the opposition as well, to take a look at the visit of Tottenham on Tuesday. Just a few quick mentions from our viewers and listeners. I did ask them to send in their thoughts about Elanga and whether they were impressed, whether they think it's a platform to build on. Mika says Elanga can outrun pretty much any Premier League player, and we should try to play on that more. Also very happy for his assist for the Valdemar goal. 4 to retain the ball and passed it with his right. Sports Europe says, I think if Anthony Gordon and Harvey Barnes had converted more from his crosses and pullbacks versus Barca, he would have had a lot more confidence before now. The excellent assist versus Everton gets the monkey off his back. And that kind of goes back to the point we're referring to with our Malik Chow, sliding doors kind of moment. Isaac says, yes, impressed and much better, but he needs to build and keep building. Otherwise, next thing you know, it's Murphy will be back in the side. He's taken 20 games for his first assist, but there are positive signs. And Raj says, yes, but the team needs to use him more. So often he's looking for the early ball or the top, but we pass it sideways. The third goal on Saturday was an example of using his pace and power. He needs to improve his end product, but Eddie Howe will coach that. So everyone very positive about Elanga going forward. Malik Chow gets another goal. And then Everton do pull one back through Dewsbury Hall. Lovely finish, actually. Really nice goal, that. But Newcastle never really under too much threat at all. They can make the substitutions. They can bring players off. Just looking at David Moyes' comments after the game, he said something on the lines that Newcastle are one of the most, if not the most powerful side in the Premier League. And I guess, what that kind of reaffirms again is that they've set the bar. We know how Newcastle United are when everything clicks. They are this good. Is it something that you think they can maintain going forward? Because we've been here before, haven't we?
Yeah.
With this kickstarts our season and then it doesn't. Will it? Should it? Hopefully it will.
Firstly, I can't believe we've skipped over Lewis Hall's cross.
Go on.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
No, go on. Well, I did have Lewis Hall down, but we kind of talked about how good he was. I don't want to repeat ourselves. He's excellent. What were you doing, Chelsea? Selling them? I don't really care. Thank you.
Talk about the cross.
Come on, then. Go on.
As a left footer myself,
the levels are the same, Mark.
Exactly the same. Yeah. I just thought it was a perfect cross. I just loved it. I loved it. Everything about it. His first touch to get the ball out his foot. It's in that area where Pickford can't really come for it, but feels that he can. So it's that, what is it? Allardyce used to call it the corridor of uncertainty, something like that. Some nonsense. It's just brilliant, and it's just made to be put back across the keeper. I just loved it, and I thought, look, I will say about the two fullbacks. I'm sorry, I'm not. I will answer your question.
No, well, actually, I've got a stat about the two fullbacks that I was going to share. Everton's danger areas were split 38-38 down both flanks. Now, last week I got the stats out about how teams just targeting Newcastle United's left-hand side, but it was split on either flank. Now, yes, Everton weren't at their best, but it also maybe suggested actually they didn't fancy either one of Livramento or Hall as being the vulnerable part of Newcastle's back line.
I think stats only tell you half the story, don't they? Your eyes tell the rest. And when I looked at the two of them, there was a lovely balance about what they did. So one of the things we can't have with Newcastle, because they can be a little bit defensively vulnerable, is you can't have both fullbacks bombing on all the time. There has to be balance to it. It has to be done in the right ways.
I mean, there were times.
No, there were. Well, there was. I mean, there was a situation when
the first half
when Livermento's played Hall in on goal, which I thought was hilarious. But what I'm saying is, you can't have that constantly. You've got to pick and choose.
Have discipline.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what I love about the two of them, that they show that discipline, that judgment of the situation is just perfect. I thought the two of them were sensational on Saturday. I think, honestly, and I've said this about a few players, if Newcastle can hold on to both of them, they could genuinely be the fullback duo for the next decade. And I mean that. The two, if they can avoid injuries and all that sort of stuff, I just think when I look at them, they're very, very similar. On they're both comfortable on the ball. They're both defensively more solid than they get credit for. I actually think Livermento is possibly one of the best one-on-one fullbacks I've seen. I thought he handled Grealish brilliantly. He was sensational against Grealish. As for Hall, actually, no, I'll bracket them both in together again, because I mentioned at the start of the show about balance. And I thought the balance across the Newcastle side, because of those two, the balance going forward, the organisation defensively, everything came from those two. They dictated the game in a way that I've not seen fullbacks do very often. Kieran Trippier can do that, and did it when he first came in. I thought, there was elements of that. You can also see that they've learned from Trippier. The little bit of dark arts going on, like all that sort of stuff. I think the two of them were sensational. But Lewis Hall, as a lefty myself, admittedly not quite at his level, but I loved everything about his performance and the balance that he gave, the confidence that he gave to Harvey Barnes, the link up play with Barnes. I just think, we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I know we're not an England podcast, we spoke about the World Cup. If he keeps doing that, then he could well start for England.
Well, look, we're the perfect partnership, Mark, because I ended up finishing that game thinking I've loved what Tino Livramento has done for Anthony Elanga. So perfect. Kind of sums up exactly our feelings on the fullbacks. Yeah. Go on then, Moisey on Newcastle.
I would argue it as Newcastle can be the most physical team in the league, but I think there's some games this season when they haven't been for whatever reason. But we know when they're at it, when they're full throttle, when they're in your face, when it's aggression, when it's intensity, they're right up there. And that's why when they play teams like Arsenal and Manchester City and Liverpool and sides like that, they absolutely have to rise to those levels to get something from the games. I know they didn't against Liverpool. There were circumstances behind that. Yes, they didn't against Arsenal because they dropped off in the last 20. But I just think the seeds of that were in Manchester City. And I look at those two games, and I think we are now starting to see what we normally see from Eddie Howe's side during a season where it gets towards Christmas. And yes, there may have been a lull, but I think the players are now understanding what it takes to get to where they want to be. I would agree with Moyes. I think Newcastle are one of the most powerful sides in the league. I mean, you'll have been in mixed zones, seeing the players up close. They're a big side. Even what your class is, your smaller players, your Gordons and Tinos, they're big. They are big players. And that's what the Premier League's about now. We've had that sort of spell where everyone wanted to be Man City and have your David Silvas and such like. Now it's kind of a big league again.
And hopefully they can build on this, right?
That's a challenge. Now, I looked at the next two fixtures, and we'll, put the Derby, because we genuinely don't need to talk about it yet, because there are two massive games coming up first, because Newcastle have to be targeting 6 points from these two games. That's top and bottom of it. We know how good they are at home. We know Tottenham have a poor record up here. We watched Tottenham on Saturday night, and they were really, really poor. I will warn and say I don't think they'll be that poor again. I think Frank will turn them around. Burnley coming up here on Saturday. They're not having a great return to the Premier League, to say the least, but they are a hard-working side. They will be tough to break down. Parker will get them organised and disciplined. But Newcastle absolutely have to be looking to take 6 points, because if they do, going into that sort of 2 weeks before and over Christmas, they could give themselves a platform to really kick on. Now, this is a 4 point short now of Europe, I think it is.
Something like that's tight.
So the league hasn't really done what it normally does, where it does tend to contract, if you want to call it that.
They're They're only 11 points off the top.
Yeah, so it's still there. The title push is still on. But no, look, if they can get sort of 6 points from these next 2 games, then the garden looks a lot rosier, doesn't it?
And in terms of that away record that is now thankfully in the bin, it's massive, isn't it? It's absolutely huge. But again, given of what is coming next, it's a little bit daft to say, but you're only as good as your next away win. So it may be in many ways the Sunderland derby comes at the wrong time, because what ideally you would want is, and I know form goes out the window, is you'd want another away game against XYZ and not a derby game, because normal circumstances don't apply. That being said, that's the hand they've been dealt.
But there's never a good time for a derby game. I think you mentioned it earlier. Form doesn't matter. It's always about who shows up on the day. And I think we've seen in the past, we can go back to the Pardew days and stuff like that, where Newcastle had that horrible run in derbies, and it was purely because they just weren't in the right frame of mind for the games. I don't feel like Sunderland turned up home and away more prepared for that derby environment, and I fully believe that. Now, I would argue at the same time, the last derby, although it was a very different Sunderland side, Newcastle were more in that mindset than Sunderland were. I think Sunderland got overawed by that the FA Cup tie and everything going on around it. Added the fact Newcastle were just a better side. I can't believe I'm talking this much about the derby, because there's 2 huge games before it comes. But thrown forward to it, this Sunderland side, having watched them on a number of occasions this season, kind of give me a feeling of a side like your Brightons and Brentfords, that the sort of sides Newcastle don't like playing against. So it's going to be a scrap. It's going to be a battle. It's going to be intense. There'll be a great atmosphere down there. We know there will be. It's going to be a tough one, really tough. I'd argue the toughest derby Newcastle played for a long, long time. But, and again, and I'm going to keep saying this, can't focus on that at the moment. It doesn't matter. Simple as that at the moment. All that matters is beating Tottenham, not even Burnley, just beating Tottenham, continue the momentum from Saturday, and then going to Burnley on Saturday, looking to really gain some momentum. Because that would make it 4 straight league wins with Man City.
It would.
So, that is momentum going into a crucial period of the season. But I don't like this thing going on at the moment where there is a lot of talk of the derby, because
it's just natural, though.
Oh, no,
I get what you're saying. I think in terms of the away form and what this result against Everton can do, because it's the next away game, you have to speak about it.
No, you do.
Downplaying it.
No, I'm not. I'm absolutely not
downplaying it in a rude Hullets kind of way. But what I mean is
it's derby the region, not the city.
What I mean is in terms of we're talking about the next away game.
No, it is.
The momentum that you can build, but actually, it doesn't really apply to the next away game because of what the game is.
No, and I do get it. My point is that the focus just has to be on Tottenham, because if you start taking your eye off the ball in the Premier League, no matter who you're playing, Tottenham, Burnley, Sunderland, Man City, doesn't matter. You'll come unstuck if you're not focused.
I mean, we also got the small matter of a away game to Bayer Leverkusen as well before that. Or was that the UEFA? Oh, it's Europa League first. The Bayer Leverkusen comes the week after. Comes the Wednesday after. So
it's this is my point, and I've learned this from dealing with managers at all levels, that their focus will always be just on the next game. And there's some I deal with who always say the next important day, or the most important day, is whatever the next day is. If it's training, that's your focus. If it's a match day, that's your focus. So, I just don't want to get too carried away thinking about the derby.
Stop talking about it then. Stop talking.
You brought it up.
I know, I'm sorry. Anyway, ladies and gents, that has been the Monday show with myself, Andrew Musgrove, and him, Mark Withers. We'll be back on Wednesday morning, hopefully celebrating 3 points from Newcastle United over Spurs. Do get into the comments. Let us know your thoughts on anything that we've discussed today. What a fantastic win it was for Newcastle United over Everton. Plenty of content coming your way over the next 24 hours to look ahead to that game against Tottenham before, as we say, me and Mark return on Wednesday. Until then, enjoy whatever you're doing. And here's to 3 points against Tottenham.